Were the Thousand Sons noble, or was it a lie the whole time? This is Megduck, and I'm going to be going into trying to answer that question. Now, to start off, we need to start with the beginning. The Thousand Sons were originally from modern day Iran, Iraq, Egypt. This would heavily influence their weapons, their armor, and their culture. Now, the Emperor was trying to experiment and make a psychic Space Marine Legion, a legion that would be stronger and could pretty much fight the warp a lot better. Now, you could say that maybe this was a precursor to the Grey Knights, that this was the beginning experiment. Um, and that could be true. There's definitely some evidence in the sense that they were very unstable, which could give him ideas of how to make something better. Now, as the Great Crusade happened, they were in a lot of pain. They were very, very loyal to the Emperor, but they were in a lot of pain because of the fact that the flesh change was happening. Their body was morphing, and the more they used their psychic abilities, the worse it got. But on the other side, when the flesh change would claim someone and they killed him, the rest of them would become stronger psychically. So it would cause this fear in them that they would die to it. The flesh change was very scary for the Thousand Sons, and it caused them to kind of become desperate to find a way to cure it. And their only hope was, to them, their only hope was Magnus, was their Primarch, was their father, that maybe he could save them like other Primarchs had saved their allegiance. So they end up meeting him. They meet Magnus, and at this point, they're so riddled with pain, and the flesh change is attacking them so bad, and there's only 1,000 of them remaining, that they don't even remember first meeting Magnus. All they remember is that they met him, and then the pain went away after a little bit, and that the flesh change was cured. That's what they were told. They were told it was gone. So this would lead them to believing that Magnus is pretty much, they worshipped him. They saw him as this man that saved them. Their father had saved them. Their father, this warrior philosopher, this mighty man had saved them, and they wanted to be just like him. And so, on the surface, you could see that as just a good thing. You could see that as, Magnus was very smart. He saved them. He did this. But they didn't know the full story. They didn't know that Magnus had given up his eye, that Magnus had made a deal with a warp entity that he would never tell them about, that he still hasn't paid off. But they thought and they saw themselves as the greatest. They saw themselves and based their whole identity off of their father, and they tried to imitate him. They tried to act in the way that he acted. They tried to pretty much be like him. And so they studied the warp. They learned from their father. They tried to be perfect. And they saw themselves as the smartest people out there and the smartest and best legion. And besides their, obviously not as smart as their father, but they saw themselves as better than even others within their legion. Now, this would cause negative interactions because Magnus would send out the different captains of the occults and pretty much to try to interact with these different legions, to try to interact with these different, pretty much the different legions, to learn different cultures, to try to make a good name for the Thousand Sons and try to repair any damage that has happened to their reputation, which there was. Now, some were really good, like Hathelmut when he went to the Emperor's Children, but some were very bad. Ulazar went to the Space Wolves, and he was there very short amount of time. It doesn't really say how long it was, but it's just noted a very short amount of time. While he was there, I theorize, this isn't necessarily a fact, but I theorize that he probably talked down to them. He probably tried to explain to them the nature of the warp and what the warp is and what psychic stuff was and the whole thing about it. And the Space Wolves, they don't like explaining a lot about the warp. They don't like explaining a lot about the stuff because they have their own way. They worship the warp, or not worship it. They know and understand the warp differently. And their thing is they try to keep it secret because they say that they get their power from Fenris. So they try to keep a lot of it secret. They try not to tell people a lot about it because it's their way of protecting others from the dangers of the warp. Now, this obviously caused a lot of a negative interaction and would later cause problems between the two legions. And later on, would cause the Council of Nicaea, because the Thousand Sons always seeing themselves as better, mixed with the flesh change, and them always pushing like rituals and doing different sorceries. The other legions got kind of nervous and were like, "Hey, this doesn't seem right. We need to sanction this." Now, Thousand Sons, thinking they knew best, always tried to push it. And even after the Council of Nicaea, they decided to push even further and try to do things and take stuff into their own hands. Mainly, they thought they could save the Emperor. Their father, Magnus, saw a vision of Horus turning traitor, and Horus was like, Magnus was like, I need to save the Imperium. I know best. I know how to save it. I need to try to save Horus so then I can stop this. So they all tried, and they all sided with their father to help him, and he projected himself to Horus, and he failed. He wasn't able to save Horus. He wasn't able to convince him. And then he projects himself to Terra to warn his father, and it shows kind of his lack of understanding fully of the warp, because a warp entity comes up and gives him power enough to break through the barrier around Earth. And Magnus just accepts it. He accepts it and says, well, some warp entities are actually just nice, so I'm going to destroy it and go through. This would show kind of how his sons also thought, because they based their whole identity and they based everything off of him. They based it off of how he acted. So whenever Magnus wasn't telling them to do something or wasn't trying to explain stuff to them, they always saw themselves as in the right. They always saw themselves as the smartest ones in the room. Now, this would cause, after Magnus destroyed the Webway project, he wouldn't tell anyone about what happened. He would just tell them that it failed. He'd lock himself away, and he waited for them to die, and he consigned them to death. When the Space Wolves came and tried to hail Magnus and say, hey, like, what's going on, he ignored them. And then when the Space Wolves fired down on the planet, the Thousand Sons, who didn't know anything, were like, we're getting attacked. We're getting attacked. They betrayed us. We're going to try to defend ourselves. Now, Magnus would end up deciding to change his mind and try to save his sons because he loved them dearly. And he goes to fight Leman and save his sons, and he gives the book to Ahriman, and he tells Ahriman to cast a spell that will save them and teleport them away. This would end up teleporting them to the planet of the sorcerers. Now, when they get there, they meet a shard of Magnus. One of the shards, because when Magnus loses, his soul fragments into shards. Now, Magnus secluded himself. He told the Thousand Sons to stop. He said, you need to stop. You need to let me die. You need to let go. And you need to let yourselves die. Because there's no solution to the flesh change. I'm done looking into it. Let yourselves die. I ban trying to fix it. So Ahriman still continues to try to fix it, because just like his father, he thinks that he knows best. He thinks, well, there has to be a solution to this. There has to be a way to fix and solve the flesh change. And then when they find out about there being other shards of Magnus and a way to save him, they go on a quest to try to find the different shards and to save him. Now, the flesh change starts coming back even worse and starts affecting them more and more. And it starts affecting one of the main more notable characters. It starts affecting Hathel Mutt. Hathomat. Now they work with this demon to help find the shards of Magnus, and that same demon talks to him and says, hey, there's a way to fight off the flesh change. You just need to push it, the changes that are happening in your body, you just need to push them into something else. So he does it into prisoners that are on the ships that they're on. And the demon says, but I want you to do something for me. And he says, I want you to go into the Book of Magnus, and I need you to change something. I need you to open it up and just try to change some part of the Book of Magnus. It's not going to be that big, and it's not that important. Now, Hathomat, trying to save himself, does it. He learns the thing, he goes, and then he tries to change the Book of Magnus. And he ends up changing just a small little part of the Book of Magnus. Now, it doesn't seem that important, right? It's just a little bit of the Book of Magnus, just like a number or like a letter or something, right? It's not that big. But this would cause, when Ahriman tries to save and cast the rubric to save the Legion, he pretty much, because he goes and casts it, and I believe that the letter and the number or whatever ended up changing in the book, I think it was tied to the rubric spell and ritual. And that when he casts it, it was incorrect, he didn't have the right stuff, and it doomed the Legion and caused them to be stuck in their armor. And caused them to be these soulless automatons that they would become. And that only some of them were allowed to survive, and only some of them, were saved. But this goes back to the question: were the Thousand Sons noble? Were they noble, right? Or were they doomed, right? And my answer is, I think that they were noble. I think they were influenced by their father. I think that I think they were noble before they met Magnus. I think they were, but they were scared and they became desperate. And when they met their father and he saved them, they started worshiping him and seeing him as this grandiose thing, as this great, this god, essentially. And they based everything they were and had off of him. This would cause them to see themselves as the greatest, the smartest, the best, because their father was the best. Their father had saved them in a way that no other Primarch could do, that not even the Emperor could do. He is the best. He is the smartest, and they based everything off of it. And when he abandoned them multiple times, it broke them. It broke them to where they were like, okay, Magnus isn't the best. He's not the smartest. And they saw themselves as the best. They saw themselves as the smartest. And they said, we can do it ourselves. He failed us. He couldn't do this, so we will. And so I think that's the answer. But obviously, put your thoughts in the comments. What you think, whether you like the video or what you actually think. Like, were they noble? Were they not? I want to hear from you all. And please like and subscribe. And yeah, I hope you have a good day.